Gab, do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
Okay, Gab, thank you. Jimmy, who's going to do the go law?
Scout law will go to AJ.
AJ.
A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
Okay, thank you. And Jimmy, who's going to do Scout Oath?
Scout oath will go to Kristen.
Say it again, Jimmy. Jimmy,
Scout
who
oath
is it?
will go to Tristan.
Tristan, okay.
Scout sign. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, and to obey the Scout law, and to help other people at all times, and to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. 2.
Okay, thank you. Outdoor code is who, Jimmy?
Ethan.
Jimmy, you got to speak up. Who is it?
The outdoor code will go to Ethan.
All right, Ethan.
As an American, I'll do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners, to be careful with fire, to be considerate in the outdoors, and to be conservation-minded too.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Just a minute, I'm writing down who's here. I'd like you to keep your camera on during the whole class so that we know you're here. Okay, this pertains mostly to the people in Black Alpha. Well, no, the first part is everybody. Is there anyone who does not have an ink pad? If you don't have an ink pad, you can use a pencil with paper and Scotch tape. Also, you're going to need paper towel and some alcohol to clean your fingers after we finish the class. Is there anyone who does not have that stuff at this time? Okay, so everyone's got their stuff. Okay, next week for the 485B, there'll be a retest on double half hitch for Max, Adrian, and Victor. There'll be a retest for the taut line hitch with Jimmy, Max, Gab, and Cammy. Now, if you want to make a video and submit it to me before then, you can do that. Next week also, we'll be having edge training, which is the way that Boy Scout tasks and classes are taught. And each each of you will be teaching another scout how to do the square knot after you understand how the EDGE program works. Next week, I'll also be asking you for an update on your physical training program. So be ready to tell me that. Do I have any questions from anyone? Justin, welcome. Put your video on, please. Okay, no questions. Justin, put your video on. Okay, at 9:15, we're going to stop accepting people. You can't earn the merit badge if you don't sit through the whole class. If there's no questions, you can take that down. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Sean, who is going to be your instructor today. Please be polite and keep your camera on. What?
Good morning. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, one additional comment is just so that you know we're recording this meeting. Go ahead, Mr. Sean, sorry.
All right. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Sean, Mr. Sean, Tristan's dad. You guys might know me as. I know pretty much all the Black Alpha guys. We've been together for a few years in Cub Scouts and moving on up to Boy Scouts. So everyone else that doesn't know me, nice to meet you all. And I hope this is informative as well as a little bit fun. This is the fingerprinting merit badge. As Rick said, I spent about 8.5 years as a security police in the Air Force. And then I moved on to safety for the rest of my career. So usually it was different people that did the fingerprinting if anybody got arrested when you brought them back to the cop shop, as we called it. But we did have some classes, so I'm definitely not qualified to read fingerprints. That's really a specialty. If there's going to be a criminal investigation, it's really a specialty that someone can actually identify fingerprints manually or through an automated system. All right, with that, I'm going to see if this video presentation that I have is going to work. So bear with me for a moment while I share my screen. I've got some videos embedded in here, so I'm gonna start off first. I'm gonna see if my audio and the video works when I use my video player. So let me play this and see if you guys are able to see it.
Christiane, put your video on, please.
Listen, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created.
Can everybody hear that?
That they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. That among
Thumbs up
these,
if you can hear it.
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You can see the Statue of Liberty?
Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, hopefully this will work then. All right. Let me get back to here. I'm not used to being on this side of the Zoom meeting, so bear with me as I struggle to be the host. Okay, everybody got my screen on their device? You see the slideshow? All right. All right, here we go. Said this is week 7 for our training, and then it's going to be a 10-foot merit badge of fingerprinting. So this is the requirements to earn the fingerprinting merit badge from the BSA. The first one there says give a short history of fingerprinting, and then tell the difference between civil and criminal identification, which we'll go through. Then we're going to talk about and explain the difference between the automated fingerprint identification system, or Aphis, or sometimes it's referred to as the integrated automated fingerprint identification. So those two are interchangeable. It's either Aphis or iAphis. It's used by law enforcement. And biofingerprinting system that's used to control access to buildings, airports, computers, well, now even laptops, smartphones, iPhones. And then do the following. So we're all at home, so we're going to be doing the following and do the best we can since we can't be in person. But we're going to talk about and name the surfaces of the body where friction or papillary ridges are found. Name the 2 basic principles supporting the science of fingerprints, and then give a brief explanation of each. And then we're going to talk about what it takes to actually positively identify a person using fingerprints. And this one, we're going to take a set of prints. I didn't plan on using the adhesive tape procedure. So if you don't have an ink pad, we'll talk about that briefly if you want to do that. But I'm really going to go more into the 4A, which is making a rolled and plain impression on the 10 card or the 10 print card that you have. And then 5, then we're going to go through, make sure that you guys understand and just show me as best you can that what you've learned, and then identify some of the certain things on your fingerprint that make them unique. All right, Mr. Rick already went over this. Hope everyone has everything. I tried to find an ink pad and I couldn't, so I just got a sponge and a bottle of ink. So we'll see how that works out. Rick mentioned alcohol and some paper towels. Baby wipes. I got a lot of baby wipes with the baby in the house, so I prefer baby wipes to clean your hands after with the ink. And then your card. And what's really going to help, if you have someone there later to actually help you do your prints, you'll see why later. It's a lot easier to have someone actually assist you, because the way you have to roll your fingerprints, it's kind of an unnatural body movement. If you have someone actually controlling your hands, it's a little bit easier. But if you don't have anybody, it's all right. It'll work. It just helps out a little bit. And then also, I think you guys got sent out your merit badge workbook or worksheet. If you have that, your scoutmaster might want to see that at a later date. So you might want to fill that out. And it's kind of a helpful guide as we go through today. Goes through all the requirements step by step. You can fill that out. Okay, first of all, good question. What is fingerprinting, right? So it's a fingerprint is an impression left by the friction ridges of a human finger. And we'll talk about friction ridges later on. So human fingerprints, they're detailed, nearly unique. You'll talk about that. They're absolutely unique, but usually, like most things in life, nothing is absolute, but they're nearly unique, difficult to alter, and they're durable over your life. So even as you grow old, you basically have the same fingerprints as you had when you were born. And then fingerprint evidence is the most positive means of identifying a person, in a sense, because if you're looking at DNA, which nowadays DNA is really what's used by most criminologists, police, but even if you're an identical twin, you actually have the same DNA as your twin, identical twin, but you actually have different fingerprints, even though your DNA is the same. And every fingerprint is unique. All right. First of all, let's talk about a little bit of the history of fingerprinting. It's been around for quite a while, even antiquity and medieval ages. They found fingerprint impressions on clay tablets. They've been used as seals and on pottery, walls on Egyptian tombs, Greek and Chinese. And even in ancient China, they realized that fingerprints were fairly unique. They didn't recognize how unique, but they used them often to authenticate government documents. And even though the ancients didn't realize that the fingerprints were so unique, they did use them. I don't know if anybody or who has heard of famous Babylonian king, King Hammurabi. But he actually took the fingerprints of people when they were arrested. Not sure what they did that for, maybe for later identification, but as far back as then, they were taking fingerprints. And there on your left, that's from Chinese, how they used their government documents, how they authenticated them or put their seal on there. And that's just a little cartoon that I liked, kind of funny. People wonder how they built the pyramids. Got a giant thumbprint on there, so we could probably identify who that is. And then moving on to the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. 1686, there was a professor of anatomy at University of Bologna, Malpighi. He identified ridges, spirals, and loops, which still used today, that are left on a fingerprint surface. 1788, an anatomist, Johann Christoph Andreas Meyer, quite a mouthful for a name. He was the first European to recognize that fingerprints were actually unique to each individual. So as far back 1788, they realized that fingerprints were unique. And then as we move, a lot going on in the 19th century. Gian Evangelista Perkini, he's the one that really put this down. He identified 9 fingerprint patterns, which we'll talk about all those later on. They're considered ridge details today, but I'll show you. He actually drew a chart that showed all these. And then in 1840, a gentleman named Robert Blake Overton, he actually wrote to Scotland Yard You guys familiar with Scotland Yard? Anybody? If you won't know what Scotland Yard is, go ahead and unmute your mic. Tell me about it. Nobody's going to volunteer? Well, anyway, if you don't know what Scotland Yard is, it's basically like the headquarters, Europe, basically now. It's kind of like the FBI of America. It's the headquarters. It's like an international EU type of agency that does criminal investigations and does investigations. All right. Well, way back in 1840, this guy, Robert Blake Overton, he actually wrote to Scotland Yard suggesting that they start checking for fingerprints. And it was after the murder of Lord William Russell that he did this. And I'll show you a letter here in a second that he actually wrote to Scotland Yard and put his own bloody fingerprints on a letter to show the detail and how unique it was. And also the other thing interesting about this is, if anybody's ever heard anything about Jack the Ripper, this was the same time, about the 1840s, that time frame, where Jack the Ripper was terrorizing London. And Robert Blake Overton, that was, if they had listened to him, they might very well have been able to catch Jack the Ripper, because he left behind a lot of evidence in the form of bloody fingerprints. So, but Scotland Yard didn't listen, and Jack the Ripper went on and never got caught, actually. So then moving on, 1880, there was a Scottish surgeon in Tokyo Hospital. His name was Harry Faulds. He published the first paper on the usefulness of fingerprints for identification and the proper method to record them using printing ink. And then in last one there, in Calcutta, some of you might have seen that spelled a different way. India, city in India. It used to be spelled C-A-L-C-U-T-T-A, but it's been switched to that spelling that you see there. Well, the Fingerprint Bureau was established 1897 by the Council of Governors, and that fingerprints, they determined that fingerprints, should be used for classification of criminal records. So if you got arrested, they would take your fingerprints and they would put them on file for later use. There's a picture on your left, the individual, John Evangelista Perkine, and he's the one that developed the 9 patterns that you see on the far right there. He drew those out, and those are actually pretty close to what they use today for identification of different characteristics. And then in the middle is the letter that I talked about, the one that Robert Blake Overton wrote to Scotland Yard. While I was doing research on this letter actually got sold at an auction company not too long ago, but they auctioned it off for about $10,000 US, the original letter that was sent to Scotland Yard from Robert Blake Overton. And then moving on, a lot went on, 20th century. Excuse me, coffee break. Anybody have any questions so far? Just raise your hand and let me know anytime. Everybody all right? Still with me? All right. All right, so moving on to the 20th century. This French scientist, Paul-Jean Collier, developed a method to transfer latent prints from surfaces. And if anybody's wondering what a latent print, it's basically just what's left behind if you touch a surface, and what's left behind is your latent print. And that's what they, at a crime scene, that's what they lift off of the surface, is a latent print. So this method to actually fingerprint using iodine fuming, on things that were hard to actually get, on materials that were hard to get fingerprints off them. It allowed them to get a lot more fingerprints this way. And talks about Scotland Yard again. And they began identifying criminals the first time starting in 1901. And then the famous one, the Sheffer case in 1902, it was the first case of the identification, arrest, and conviction of a murder based upon fingerprint evidence. And then in the United States, basically the identification of individuals through fingerprints has pretty much been a staple in the US since the beginning of the 20th century. And the FBI, we'll talk about more about this later, but the FBI manages that Aphis system that I was talking about. And it's quite a large database, as you can see. It actually holds 70 million criminal records, along with 30 million civilian or non-criminal fingerprints. We'll talk about the difference between those two later on. And on your screen, on the left, that's the actual Sheffer case that they talked about, that they actually, the first one they ever arrested, tried, and convicted a murder using fingerprints. And that's the picture of the convicted murderer there. His name was Sheffer. And then just a shot there, that's a screenshot of the FBI's Aphis system. And we'll talk about that, like I said. All right, I got a video here. It's a short video. Gives you a little bit, talks about the history, which we already went over, but gives you a little bit more information. So we'll see. Hopefully this will work. All right, interesting. All right, first let's talk about Aphis or Aphis. When I use the term, they're the same thing. Sometimes they just add an I for integrated, like I talked about. But it stands for Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System. And it's a computerized system that's maintained by the FBI or the Federal Bureau of Investigation, starting in 1999. It's a national, so it's just within the US, automated fingerprint identification and criminal history. And you can actually, if you enter these prints in there electronically. Before this, it was quite extensive to imagine if you had a set of prints and you would have to go through books, and they'd have specialists that went through books just looking for matches for fingerprints. So until this came along, it was quite intensive the way they had to do it. So fingerprints get put into the system. Like I said, 70 million criminal subjects, 31 million civilian, and then 73,000 terrorists that are input by international law enforcement agencies. And then I got another video here, talks about the FBI. They give an award out every year for agents that have caught criminals basically using fingerprint evidence. So it's a short video, and we'll see if this one works again.
The housing area. The second house I came to, I saw a body lying under the garage floor. There was a lot of blood on the garage floor underneath the victim. There also was blood smeared all over the drywall. The victim was cold at the touch, was obviously dead. There was no pulse, and called it into dispatch. I was working the same side of town as Officer Sparks, and I heard the call go out that he had discovered a homicide victim. Through the next 30 years, everyone was aware of this case. It was the oldest unsolved murder case Escondido police have ever had. The early part of 2007, Norm White and I were hired by the police department as cold case detectives.
We thought that whoever did this has done other crimes before and after, or both. So his fingerprints should be somewhere in the system.
We had no physical evidence. We had no witnesses. We had a 30-year-old cold murder case. All we had was the photograph of a bloody, latent fingerprint.
It's one of the more difficult prints that I've seen. Yes, it's a long shot, but we always go and try for them because it is our experience that sometimes the worst of the worst prints are identified. I assigned it to Hoy because I knew that she would take the time to really work with this difficult print.
You can see it's a puzzle print canvas, and it took us a while to really get it right before we searched this latent print. We try to estimate the size, adjust the contrast, try to reverse image and the mirror image, guess which one is the correct one that we should use. Normally we search in our state database, which is the automated latent print system. We did not get any hit. I tried the FBI Aphis system. Eric, would you look at that?
Sure.
It came back with 20 candidates. When I go down to number 9, and it was a match, and oh, my heart was pounding.
It was August 21st, 2007, and I was at home when I received a call from boy Louis.
I got a hit on the homicide case that he sent in.
What? That's incredible. When I received the call that day, it was like being a child on Christmas morning and opening the best present that you could ever receive.
Sir, my name is Norman White. I'm a detective with the Escondido Police Department. We're looking into a murder that occurred in 1977. Once we got a name, Michael Moon, that hit gave us a starting point. Then we really started the investigation.
Hey, Mike, how you doing today? We conducted a non-custodial, non-Mirandized interview of Michael Moon in Reno, which was tape recorded with a button camera. I'm Detective Chuck Gaylor. I was wondering if we might take a couple of minutes of your time. We're trying to clear up some information on the case we're investigating. Being a carpenter, his most likely defense would be, I worked there at the crime scene. I cut myself. That's how my bloody fingerprint wound up there. Our objective was to get him to distance himself from that crime scene. Did you ever work in that complex? No. When I first saw Michael Moon sitting in court, it was a wonderful feeling to know that a person who had committed this murder 30 years ago would now face justice.
This case is a once-in-a-lifetime sort of a case. It will always mean a lot to both of us.
Justice was served. We get the bad guys off the streets. When I come in the office, I'm thinking I'm fighting crime again today.
When you get a hit from a Aphis, your crime is probably solved.
Okay, I think the video was lagging a little bit. I apologize. I'm not sure what happens, but I think you guys could hear the audio okay, right? All right, good. At least you got the audio part. All right. So next we're going to talk about differentiating between Aphis and biometric fingerprinting systems. All right, 2 different things. Aphis basically involves positive identification, and it was developed by police to identify those who often desire not to be identified. Whereas biometrics, that normally does not involve positive identification, but instead computer finding enough similarity to give a red light or a green light. So if you guys have a computer or a smartphone, I know I can unlock my phone with my fingerprint. So when it comes to that biometric technology, it's basically just looking for enough information, whether to open my phone or not. So it's not actually positively identifying me, so to speak. It's just seeing if it has enough information to do that. And then biometrics normally used to identify people that want to be identified, unlike a criminal. Biometrics for people that want to be identified. And then so it's okay if it fails, because it's usually going to fail in the correct way. So what I mean by that is it's just going to tell you to try again. So if you can't get into a secure building, even though it is your fingerprint, the only thing that's going to happen is that you're going to have to go to the computer guys and get your fingerprint rescanned. Whereas a failure in the law enforcement, if your fingerprint is somehow thought to be left behind at a crime scene, well, that's a lot bigger deal, right? You might get falsely accused of a crime that you didn't commit. So a failure in a criminal investigation is a lot more serious than a failure in a biometric situation. And once again, this is kind of the same information that we went over there. You guys look at the screen. The only thing I want to touch on again is that when you're talking about an Aphis search, when they put a fingerprint into the system that they're looking for a match, it can take hours or sometimes days to complete that search because it has to go through every 100 million fingerprints in that data system and compare the points of matching with each one of those. So it could take hours, days to do an Aphis print, whereas a biometric, it's within that database, a small database, so it's usually instantaneous. All right, this is just a funny video. Give you guys a little bit of break here, real short, and we'll move on. So if anybody ever tries to open your phone, you might, using your fingerprint, you might want to take this guy's strategy. Hopefully you guys were able to see that. We'll talk about later on about ridges and papillary ridges, and they actually occur not just on your fingers, but different parts of your body. So you can actually, if you really wanted to use your toe to open your phone, if you had to take off your shoes every time, that might be a pain, but it is possible. So we're going to talk about, let's say, civil and criminal identification. So when we talk about civil fingerprint identification, this is for people entering into public service, such as the police force or military. I know that's luckily I hadn't been fingerprinted before I entered the military. That was the first time I had ever been fingerprinted. So, but that's for anybody going into military or police. That's one of the things that they're going to do, is take your fingerprints. And what they're going to scan, they're going to put you in the system to make sure that they're not letting a criminal into our military or into the police force, and to identify them if necessary, to verify their identity at a later date. Then when you talk about criminal fingerprint identification, hopefully nobody's been in this situation where you've had your fingerprints taken at a police station for the wrong reason. This is when you've been arrested. They're going to take you in, fingerprint you, whether it's your first time. If it's not your first time, they're going to run your fingerprints through the Aphis system to see if you have prior convictions, prior arrests, and to see if you're actually who you say you are. Because obviously you're a criminal, you might be trying to hide your true identity. So your fingerprints are going to tell the truth about who you really are. And then we were talking before, they mentioned these friction or papillary ridges. We'll talk briefly about these. Basically, papillary skin is present on the palmar surfaces of your hand. Basically, when you pick up a drinking glass, when you touch a wall, when you grab a doorknob. These are the surfaces that actually touch the object that you're picking up or handling. And it's also the portions of your feet that actually touch the ground when you walk. So your toes, the front of your foot, the heel of your foot, those are actually your papillary, that's papillary skin as well. And then although many fingerprints have the same pattern look, and may look very similar, when they're examined closely, as we'll see when we do your fingerprints, when you examine them closely, there's definitely differences that an expert can tell when they look at it closely, that it's going to be individual to you. All right. And once again, it's going to be a qualified examiner that's going to do this. They've been trained to be able to identify the differences and similarities in fingerprints. And then positive identification or elimination of fingerprints can only be made by a trained professional or qualified examiner. They're going to look at the ridge characteristics that we'll talk about later on and their relationship to one another. And they can do this from any area of friction skin. Once again, friction skin is basically just those areas that touch a surface of the ground, your feet, your hands. Now there, like I said, these identical twins, right? Mom had just checked their fingerprints before she fed them. That one wouldn't have got left out of lunch. And this is interesting. When I was going through this, that apparently koalas have fingerprints that are almost identical to human beings. So that might be a possibility if they arrest a koala bear, maybe he has the same fingerprints as you. So let's talk about two basic principles of fingerprints, all right? First one is individuality. Like we mentioned, even identical twins have different fingerprints, even though their DNA is the same. And the odds of two people having the exact same fingerprints are so astronomically low. They're a great way to provide a unique identification point for individuals. And then so individuality, then permanence. When we talk about permanence, your fingerprints will never change. The papillary ridges that you have when you're born, they grow, but they never differ in shape for the entirety of your life. So there's history of people trying to get rid of their fingerprints, trying to grind them off. I don't know if anybody's been, I guess if you're determined enough, you could do that, but it's going to be a long, painful process that unless you're really planning on doing a crime, probably not a good idea. Let me do a time check here, just a second. I think maybe we need just a moment to stretch, use the facilities, maybe just 5 minutes. What time is it now?
Okay, so 5 minute break.
9:50 now. Okay. So let's just make sure everybody's back here at 10 o'clock. If before that, we can just press on, but no more than 10 minutes. So I'll see you back here at 10, okay? is that you'll see that arches have no triangles, loops have one triangle, and whirls have two triangles. We'll see that in the next slide here. So according to that, can't use my pointer here, but you'll see the first one on the top left has no triangles, right? You can see the triangles that they're talking about in these other ones. Basically, these come up to form triangles. All right, so this one, going back to the other slide, so this must be an arch because it has no triangles, right? And the second one on the top, you see they've identified one triangle. They also call them deltas, I believe. It's another term for the triangles, deltas, like as in a river delta. So according to this one, it has one triangle. So going back here, what is that? It's going to be a loop, right? With one triangle. Same as with this one triangle. The bottom here, one triangle. Now when you come here, you can see the two triangles or two deltas that are formed. So when you see those in this pattern, you're going to see a whorl if it has two triangles, right? And then once again, your single delta or triangle, all right? It's a little bit confusing, but you'll see hopefully later on it'll make more sense as we go on. So then we move on. Arches, loops, and whirls, they also have their own subcategories. First, you have to determine whether it's an arch, loop, or a whirl, and then you go on to their subcategories. And you can see there's quite a few of them here. Everybody got all those memorized already? Right? You got your double loop whirl, just a plain whirl. And when they talk like this, I think the double loop whirl, they kind of compare it to, everybody familiar with yin and yang symbol? You can kind of see that in that first one with the yin, or whichever one's the yin and which one's the yang, but it kind of forms that same look as that symbol. Then your plain whirl, obviously it's just, you can see that it's just not it's just plain, obviously. And then an accidental whirl. Get my pointer here. But you can see that it kind of, see how that comes up, the delta actually kind of comes up into the whirl there. Then the last one on the top, your radial loop, plain arch, just a plain arch. And then you can see the difference between a plain arch and a tented arch, right? This tented arch looks more like a tent, right? It goes a lot straighter up and down. Then you got your central pocket, which obviously because it loop, because you got that central pocket right there in the middle. And then I have a video later on, but they'll explain a little bit better. They call this an ulnar loop because the way the pattern goes, it actually is pointing to your ulnar bone in your forearm. All right. Now this, I like this video because really professional that has done this and is actually a professor of this that can explain it a lot better than I can. So please pay attention. I think sometimes this video is lagging, but hopefully the audio is okay. So at least that'll be understandable.
today's activity, we're going to talk about fingerprints and their characteristics. Every person is born with their own individual, unique fingerprints. In fact, if you're an identical twin, you have the same DNA as your twin. However, you have different fingerprints. When we look at these fingerprints and their characteristics, we're looking at three main patterns: arches, loops, and whirls. Keep in mind that a person may have any number of these three patterns in a set of fingerprints. An arch is the simplest type of fingerprint pattern, but also the most rare. Only about 5% of the population has arch prints. Arch patterns have ridges that begin on one side and end on the other side, making a line that looks like a hill. A tented arch has a higher, more prominent spike in the center. Loop patterns are the most common. They're found in about 70% of the population. In a loop pattern, ridges begin and end on the same side. Radial loops start and end on the thumb side of the finger and point toward the radius bone in the forearm. Ulnar loops start and end on the same side as the pinky finger and point toward the forearm's ulnar bone. In every loop, there is a triangular shaped pattern, like the Greek letter delta, where fingerprint ridges meet. In a whirl pattern, the ridges form a spiral that appears to complete a full circle. Approximately 25% of the population has whirl patterns. There are 4 major whirl patterns, and each one has at least 2 deltas. Plain whirls have 1 or more ridges that make a complete circle. You'll see a small circle in the middle with concentric circles spreading out from there. There are 2 deltas on the print that are on opposite sides of the circles. An imaginary line between the 2 deltas crossing through some part of the ridge circle. If the line does not touch the circular ridge pattern at all, the whirl is a central pocket loop. A double loop whirl has 2 loops combined into one print. It resembles a yin-yang symbol with 2 teardrop-shaped halves. And if a print has 2 or more patterns or does not fall clearly into any other category, it is considered an accidental whirl.
All right, and you can see there's a lot to it, right? A lot to learn if you're going to actually be professional trying to identify fingerprints. That's why that automated system has become such an important tool. So we're going to talk about how these patterns are used to identify individuals now. So like I said, there's experts who are trained to positively identify whether a person's set of fingerprints match the prints that are actually on some sort of file. It's a lot more difficult than it sounds. The skin is very flexible on the fingers and the palms, and can tend to make prints that are actually hard to read, or might leave a partial print where there's only part of the characteristics there. And then once again, the flexibility of the skin. 2 fingerprints taken from the same person, even one after another, most of the time they're not going to be exactly the same. But the experts are trained and they can see the variations and still point to whether those fingerprints are from the same person, even though to the lay person it might look like totally different prints. An expert can actually say it's from the same. So to actually positively identify a person, fingerprints, ridge shapes are used, matching points between the prints on file and the subject. So there's certain points on the print that are going to be unique to that person. And an expert, they can explain the reasons for every one of the differences. And they have to be able to explain the differences when they're doing the matching process. And at the bottom one there, even if there's one unexplainable difference, if they can't explain it, an expert would conclude that those prints were not from the same person. So they have to basically have all the differences explained, or else they have to rule that person out, that it's not their prints. All right. This is kind of an interesting video. We talk about fingerprints. They are very reliable, but like I said, in life, nothing is 100%. So this video just talks about how reliable fingerprint analysis actually is.
A heinous crime has been committed at Vox. Somebody keeps drinking the single-source Ethiopian Yirgacheffe coffee that I bring to the office for myself. I rounded up 5 suspects from around the office and fingerprinted them to see if I could find a match from a print I found on my mug. Is fingerprint analysis reliable enough to pin somebody to this unspeakable crime? And more importantly, how do you actually do this? To help me figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do, I brought in an expert.
My name is Peter Valentin. I'm an expert in crime scene reconstruction and forensic science. A fingerprint is probably the most important piece of information when we don't have a known connection between the victim and the offender. We have to find something that people leave at scenes relatively easy, and something that is unique enough that finding it and identifying what it is will lead us back to the person.
In order to find a fingerprint, investigators will either use a physical component like a powder, so not cocoa powder? Cool. Or a series of chemicals that make a print visible on a surface. Our fingerprints have ridges and furrows that align to create unique recognizable patterns.
There is what's called a loop right here. You have ridges that are coming into the pattern and then coming back out. Here's another loop right here. There's arches and there's whirls. And those 3 categories alone comprise at least 95% of the fingerprints that are in the database.
Everyone's fingerprints have unique features that differentiate them from everyone else's. For instance, this ridge splits into 2 here, and this ridge has a break in it. These patterns remain the same throughout a person's lifetime, which makes them a powerful identification tool. My fingerprint is pretty easy to spot. The pattern looks like a 1998 Chrysler Sebring. Investigators rely on the characteristics of a print to find a match, using a method called ACE-V. First, they analyze the print and the surface it's on to see if it's viable for examination. This one's great. This one, not so much. Then they take the suitable print and compare it against known fingerprints, looking for points of similarity and differences. For example, both these patterns are whirls, and bifurcate right here. Investigators look at these traits and try to gauge if there's enough points of comparison to declare it a match. Finally, a qualified peer reviews their conclusion to verify the match. After using high-tech software to analyze the prints from my mug, I'm kidding, this is just some stock footage I downloaded, I think I finally found a match. But okay, even when it's done by professionals, how reliable is fingerprint analysis?
It's a useful tool that obviously has value, but I think it's problematic to overstate its value, especially in a criminal justice context.
One accuracy study found that examiners made false positive identifications in 0.1% of cases, which means identifying a print as a match when it's not. That doesn't sound too bad, unless you happen to be one of those false positives. Brandon Mayfield, a lawyer from Oregon, was one of those unlucky few. He was falsely accused of the 2004 Madrid train bombing because the FBI made a false positive match with a partial print found at the scene. Mayfield seemed like a good suspect to investigators because he had recently converted to Islam and was the lawyer for a man who attempted to join the Taliban, which, in the wake of 9/11, were all red flags for the FBI.
There was a bias that existed because once they tentatively identified the unknown fingerprints belonging to this individual, who he was and what his background was, made the identification seem stronger than it actually was.
He didn't have a valid passport, so it's a little implausible on the face of it that he was handling a bag of detonators in Spain. Fingerprinting was so powerful that they just sort of trumped everything else.
Mayfield was even given his own analyst to examine the prints, and even they agreed that it was a match.
That's an interesting thing about bias, because because, you know, everybody's assumption is that the experts are biased toward the side that they're working for. Here was a guy who was working for Mayfield, and yet he corroborated the evidence against him, which turned out to be incorrect.
The FBI released a 330-page report about where their analysts went wrong, and it's pretty much a case study in a lot of the potential downfalls of fingerprinting. They cited things such as ignoring differences between the prints, lack of independent verification, the pressure of working on a high-profile terrorism investigation, and letting bias about the suspect affect their analysis. The report summed it up by saying, in any human endeavor, there is a potential for error.
You know, sort of suggest learning from history and realizing that none of these things are going to be error-free. So there's going to be mistakes and errors and screw-ups, but also evidence is inherently probabilistic.
So even though it's not a perfect tool, until a more reliable technology emerges, law enforcement will continue to utilize fingerprint analysis. And I won't ever be fully certain of who stole my coffee until I catch them on this new surveillance camera that I installed.
All right, so like you said, it's 0.1% false is not too much, but if you're on the receiving end of that 0.1%, it would be a big deal to you, especially a guy that got wrongly accused of being a terrorist. So that's why it's so important for these experts to be absolutely certain. All right. Everybody paying attention, I hope? We're going to have a little bit of a quiz time. I guess I'll be picking the people that I can see that are not see on their camera. I guess will be the first ones who are answering. Austin popped up all of a sudden. Good morning. If you guys could, let me see if I can see this. If you guys type your answers in messages, see if I can see it when it pops up. So this first one, remember we went over here? This one on the far left, the first one. Is that arch, loop, or whirl? Everybody just type in their answers if you got a guess or a scientific guess. You see anything pop up on your screen, Rick? I don't have any answers.
Yeah, we see their answers.
I guess whatever mode I'm in, I can't see the answers.
Everybody is saying, nope. Guys, just send your message one at a time. Just answer once. Philip, I can see your answer.
All right, everybody got their answers typed in? So that one is loops, right? Because it has the one triangle. How about the second one from the left?
Philip, just one time.
Yeah, everybody just answer one time. All right. So that should be an obvious, right? That one's a whirl. And the last one. That's going to be easy. You only have one answer left, correct? Which is arch. So if we go to this one, you'll see the slide we saw before. Go back there, right? No triangles on the arches. One triangle on the loop and two on the whirl. All right, how about these? Now we're gonna have fun. Everybody remember these? Go from the top left, starting with this one. This might be a little more difficult. Type in one answer only, please. Really have to figure out how to see the answers, but next time I'll figure it out.
You have to open when you
All
hover
right.
on the screen.
So that's a double loop whirl. I'm not sure who got that right, but if you did, you have got a good memory.
Most of them did. All of them did.
So how about the next one? Going from left to right, this one. Anybody remember what that subcategory is?
Mr. Sean, can you hear me?
Yeah.
When you hover down the screen, you're supposed to see, I think, more option,
Oh, okay.
and then you'll see a chat.
So which one do I want on more options?
More, and then you're supposed to see chat there. Wait, instead of seeing more, right beside share screen, there's the chat button.
Chat, yeah. Oh, I have to click that.
Yep.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if I can move this out of my way. There we go. All right, now I can see it. All right. So, well, I guess I already gave you the answers, please. So plain whirl, those who got plain whirl, good job. And you guys already saw this one. That's the accidental whirl. So just keep going here. Once I uncover one, just go to the next one and then we'll go to the bottom, all right? So the last one on the top there. Radial loop, all right, good job to those who got that one. So I'm moving down to the bottom left. So you got that one, plain arch, all right. I think who got that one? Philip, I see, come up. So the next one on the bottom, the second one from the left. We seem to have a consensus. Tented arch. All right, everybody got that one. Good job. So the next one there. All right, good job. Central pocket loop. Looks like the hammers got that one. I saw it pop up. Then the last one. Good job. All right. Now I know how to work the chat thing, so I learned something else today. Okay, now it's time for the fun part, to take some fingerprints. You'll see on your card, we're going to do the rolled and plain impressions. And in the video, it'll explain it a lot more clear what the difference between the rolled impression and a plain impression is. Basically, the rolled impressions are going to be your individual fingers. And then when we move down to the bottom, where you're actually going to take your four fingers your left and right forefingers, and then your two thumbs as plain impressions separately. All right. And then once again, if you have someone that can, especially for the rolling prints, if you have someone there that can help you out to take those prints, it's a lot easier. As you'll see in the video also, that they can actually control the movement of your fingers as you roll it, because sometimes you're in an awkward position and you tend not to do it properly. So let's watch this video before we try it on our own. All right, I think it's the same professor. She does a really good job of explaining it. So here we go.
Is going to be helping us out. I'm going to be placing his inked fingerprints on a 10 print card. So it's easiest if we actually take the card and we move it to the edge of the table. You can see there's a line under where it has labeled for the right hand. And if you can just do a crease on that line, it's a lot easier to fingerprint that way. So what I'm going to do is have Brandon give me his right hand. I'm going to start with his right thumb. Going to ink his right thumb. Now, when you ink a person's fingers, what we want to do, we don't want to get too much ink. You want to get just the right amount, and you want to make sure that your ink covers not just the center, but the entire side, because we're not just going to be pushing the print straight down. At first, we're going to be rolling it so we get more detail. So I'm just going to gently roll Brandon's finger, gentle pressure, and if your card comes up a little bit, that's okay. A lot of times when you're fingerprinting in the jail, they have a nice black box you can lock the card into. But we just have it on the edge of the table, so if it moves, that's fine. Again, ink all the way around, and we're just going to slowly and gently roll. You might not always just be printing someone who's living, you might be printing someone at an autopsy. I actually find it easier to fingerprint people at autopsies because a lot of times living people will try to help you out a little too much. And if you apply too much pressure, your print might be smudged. Remember, when we're looking at fingerprints, and we'll be looking at those at a different time, we're looking at very small details in the print. So we want just the right amount of pressure so we can see those details clearly. On your 10 print card, the spaces for the fingers are actually numbered, and your right thumb is number 1. It goes to number 5, which would be your right pinky. We then go to number 6, which would be your left thumb. So we're going to move on to fingerprint his left hand now. I'm going to do that same crease just because it's easier for me with the card on the edge of the table. So I have Brandon's left thumb, and we're going to apply some ink. And again, gentle pressure and rolling to get the sides and center. If you look at the bottom of your 10 print card, you can see there's some larger spaces. This space on the bottom right is actually for your left forefingers. The left thumb, right thumb, and the right forefingers. And unlike the top ones where we rolled, I'm going to ink Brandon's fingers. I want a little bit more ink, not just the tips, but some down the bottom, and we're going to go straight down. So that's like his right forefingers. And again, I want ink not just on the tips of the fingers this time, but more on the finger itself. So we get a little bit more ink. And you can see we have ink further down on the fingers this time. And again, we're just going to go straight down, and I am going to apply some gentle pressure. Straight up, and again with the thumb, not just on the tip, a little more down. fingerprinting it. And as you can see, this is our completed 10-print card.
All right. Let me exit out of here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and it's going to be try to capture this on cam. But if you're not if you don't have a space where your camera is, I'm going to replay this video, and I'm going to help Tristan do his actually. So I'm going to call Tristan in here. Everybody just break out to do your fingerprints. If you have any questions, either just unmute yourself and ask me, or just message me. Everybody got a pretty good idea what they're doing from the video of how we're gonna be taking these prints with the rolled prints and the plain prints. Anybody have any questions before we break out and do this? Don't everybody leave the meeting. Stay in the meeting, because we're going to come back once you're done and take a look at your cards and see if you can identify some of the things that we talked about. Okay, I'm going to replay this video while you guys work on this. I'll have my computer on, so if you have questions or anything, once you're done, let's go ahead and bring your card back, and we'll try to look at it on your cam. All right?
Mr. Sean?
Yes.
Was this the card you were, is this the card?
Yeah, it's this one that we showed. It has your personal information there on the top, and then the one that has the 10 different boxes, and they're all numbered, so it's pretty easy to keep track of it. And it says, like I said, it starts out with your last name and all of that information, and then the 10 boxes there. All right, it's pretty self-explanatory, I hope, but if you have any questions, just let me know. And once again, I'm going to be replaying this video, all right?
Sir?
Yes.
Do you need like to see do you need like see us doing it, or don't need to?
It's not a necessity. I understand you might not be taking your prints in a place where your webcam or your camera is, so it's okay if you do it in another place. Just make sure that you bring back the card so we can try to look at it. I might give you later on. I might give you my email address, and so you can take a picture of that and send it to me, and then do a brief explanation of what you found, because it'd be a lot easier than spending the time here. But I'll let you know that after we do the prints, okay? All right, I'll see you guys back here, and let's try to get this done. When I'm coming back on, hopefully you guys, I'll try to do it with the webcam. But I'll see you guys back here. Hopefully, we'll try for 10 minutes to do this. It might take a little bit longer, which is okay. All right, I'm going to play this video again. And then if you have any questions once the video's over, I'll be back.
On a 10-print card. So it's easiest if we actually take the card and we move it to the edge of the table. You can see there's a line under where it has labeled for the right hand. And if you can just do a crease on that line, it's a lot easier to fingerprint that way. So what I'm going to do is have Brandon give me his right hand and start with his right thumb. I'm going to ink his right thumb. Now, when you ink a person's fingers, what we want to do, we don't want to get too much ink. You want to get just the right amount. And you want to make sure that your ink covers not just the center, but the entire side, because we're not just going to be pushing the print straight down. At first, we're going to be rolling it so we get more detail. So I'm just going to gently roll Brandon's finger, gentle pressure. And if your card comes up a little bit, that's okay. A lot of times when you're fingerprinting in the jail, they have a nice black box you can lock the card into. But we just have it on the edge of the table, so if it moves, that's fine. Again, ink all the way around, and we're just going to slowly and gently roll. You might not always just be printing someone who's living, you might be printing someone at an autopsy. I actually find it easier to fingerprint people at autopsies because a lot of times living people will try to help you out a little too much. If you apply too much pressure, your print might be smudged. Remember, when we're looking at fingerprints, and we'll be looking at those at a different time, we're looking at very small details in the print. So we want just the right amount of pressure so we can see those details clearly. On your 10 print card, the spaces for the fingers are actually numbered.
It's when they
your right thumb
determine
is
how
number 1.
someone
It
died.
goes to number 5, which would be your right pinky. You then go to number 6, which would be your left thumb. So we're going to move on to fingerprint his left hand. I'm going to do that same crease just because it's easier for me with the card on the edge of the table. So I have Brandon's left thumb, and we're going to apply some ink. And again, gentle pressure and rolling to get the sides and center. If you look at the bottom of your 10 print card, you can see there's some larger spaces. The space on the bottom right is actually for your left 4 fingers, the left thumb, right thumb, and the right 4 fingers. And unlike the top ones where we rolled, I'm going to ink Brandon's fingers. I want a little bit more ink, not just the tips that comes out of the bottom. And we're going to go straight down. So take his right 4 fingers. And again, I want to ink not just on the tips of the fingers this time, but more on the finger itself. Get a little bit more ink.
Right index.
You can see we have it further down on the fingers this time. And again, we're just going to go straight down, and I am going to apply some gentle pressure. Straight up, and again with the thumb, not just on the tip, a little more down. Switch to the left hand. And as you can see, this is the completed 10 print card.
Too much ink, too much ink. See, it's okay, too much ink.
To bring fingers.
We're not professionals, and probably because it's just a sponge and ink.
All right, let's go.
Mr. Sean. Mr. Sean.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, is it okay if my fingerprints is you're not gonna see them that clear?
Yeah, I know. I'm running into a little problem because I had to use a bottle of ink and a sponge. Just do the best you can with the materials you have. I understand that we're not in a professional police department environment, so just do the best you can, just so you get the idea of how to do it. And I'm going to do it at another time a lot better when I actually get an ink pad that's proper.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Just.
Excuse me, I have a question, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna go around the room. JC, have you finished? JC, have you finished?
No, sir, not yet. I'm gonna use ink.
Speak up, JC, I can't hear you.
Sir, hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Can I see your card? Okay, is it finished or not? I can't hear you.
Not finished.
Okay. I see Mr. Sean still working. Ethan, are you finished?
No.
Okay, hurry up. Joshua, are you finished? Joshua? Joshua? Philip, are you finished? Okay, Philip's finished. Cammy, are you finished? Very good, Philip. Cammy, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see your card, Cammy. Okay. Jimmy, are you finished? Are you finished, Jimmy?
Sir.
Let me see your card. Okay. Madison? Madison? Madison, are you there? Are you finished?
Yes, I'm here. I'm finished.
Can I see your card? Okay. Greenwood? Are you finished? Let me see your card, Gwen. Hold your card up to the camera. Gwen, can you hear me? Hold the card up to the camera.
It's all right. Is everybody finished? Tristan's on his way to his room to show us his. Everybody else finished?
Just a minute, I'm going through now. Okay, Tristan, I see it. Teresa, are you finished? Okay, good. Michelle Shane, are you there? Michelle Shane. Michelle Shane. Gab, are you finished?
It's all right. You just do it after. It's all right.
Hold up your card to the screen. Okay. Michelle, are you there? Brittany and Gretchen.
We only finished Brittany's prints. She still has to do mine.
You only did who?
Only Brittany's fingerprints are done.
Okay, let's see it. Turn your camera on. Okay, hurry up with the other one. Austin. Austin, have you finished? Austin. All right, Gigi, are you there?
Yes, I'm almost finished.
Okay, turn your camera on. Let me see. Okay, good. Thank you. Austin, are you there? Are you finished, Austin? Hold your card up to the camera.
I do not have an ink pad nor ink inside of my printer, so yeah.
Austin, hold your card up to the camera.
I don't have it. We just ran out of ink in our printer, so like.
Anna Marie, are you there? Anna Marie and Christina,
Yes,
are you finished?
we're almost done.
Okay, Sean, you ready?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you helping me out there.
Let me tell you the people who did not finish.
I'm sorry?
Here's a list of the people that did not finish, okay?
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Okay,
I'll
thanks.
you now, but I'll send it to you. Austin, Michelle Shane, Gretchen, and Anna Marie, they did not finish.
Okay.
So they'll need to get a picture and post it on the website, on the chat site. Go ahead, Sean, I'll let you take over again.
Thanks.
Excuse me, sir. I'm not finished yet.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
I'm not finished, sir.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that here. We're gonna wrap up because what I want everybody to do is I'm going to post my email address in the Troop Messenger board or on Messenger, and everybody that's hearing me now needs you to take a picture of the card you just did today, your 10 print card. Take a picture of that, email it to me along with a short explanation of what you see within your own fingerprints, okay? You don't have to get too into detail, but just tell me if you can identify arches, loops, whirls, the combinations, the subcategories. Just tell me what you see in your own fingerprints, okay? Along with just take a picture along with that explanation and tell me about your fingerprints individuality. All right? Anybody have any? I think we're gonna wrap up. I appreciate everybody paying attention. I know this was kind of a long class, but we had a lot of a lot of stuff to cover today. So I appreciate everybody paying attention, and I'll be compiling those folks that do email me as completed. Until I get an email from you, you'll still be pending completion of this merit badge, okay? All right. Any questions? Like I said, I'll post my email in Messenger so you guys all have that and send it to me. Any questions before we do a closing?
Thank you, Mr. Sean. Let's go ahead and do the closing. I think everybody knows they got to email that to you because there's a music merit badge class starting in just a few minutes. So let's do the closing and then we'll close this room so people can go to the next merit badge if they're involved.
We have someone that can do the closing for us?
I think all of us do it.
All right. I guess we just all unmute our mics and you guys have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you.
All right.
All right, guys.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Is it great?
Great Scoutmaster.
Hello, Scout.
All scouts lead us.
0485. Dismiss.
485. Yes. Woo.
Okay.
I'm out.